And that giant cacophony tells you it's yet again time for the Power of Three podcast. And we are talking about the Master of evil, the master of deception, the master of deceit, the master of disguise as a postman, if you were, but perhaps not. I'm Kenny Smith, and I'm joined today by my now becoming a semi-regular co-conspirator. It's the one and only Craig Brawley, who does not happen to be the Master.
Hello Kenny, very nice to be here. It's always nice to be described as semi-something, so here I am.
Craig, always great to see you.
Thanks you, lovely to be here.
And well, following on from our recent discussion about the Scorpion, why don't we pick up and go with another one and talk about Master, a classic Big Finish release. Quite scary to think it's now a classic one, considering that, October 2003, it was the current release.
Yes, I was horrified to learn quite how old it was on this recent re-listen. I knew it wasn't particularly recent, but I would have thought it was maybe 2008, 2009, but no.
It's quite scary. That was part of the 40th anniversary Villains trilogy, which I loved to bits.
Of course, absolutely. It was, as you say, it was just a trilogy at first, and Master was far, far and away my least favourite.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how you found it coming back to it, because I really enjoyed the three of them. Obviously, Dave and I spoke about Omega a few months back ahead of the series finale there, because we didn't know Omega was going to be in it, so suddenly, quick, emergency release. So we did, and had our guests on to talk about the making of it. So Craig, it's release number 49, and as we said, out October 2003. Fantastic cover there with Sylvester McCoy and Geoffrey Beevers sort of in the background, in that sort of template they had, with a dome shape and a house against the blue sky with clouds, and you can see one light is on in this house. The TARDIS is in the grounds. Incidentally, Craig, that's a very fine t-shirt you're wearing there today.
Thank you very much.
It's the
Captain's Beard.
And you better tell us who they are.
Captain's Beard are a pirate band that play round here in Sussex, and I think rather further afield than that. I'm fairly certain they have international gigs, so despite the fact that they may play smaller venues in this neck of the woods, I think they are pretty successful.
What did their oldest member say on his 80th birthday? Do you know?
Probably said something like, "I've got a beard."
No, he said, "Aye, matey."
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, okay. We can move swiftly on then and flip the CD over and have a look at the back cover. Well, Craig, it tells us, many years ago, on a dark and stormy night, the disfigured and enigmatic Dr. John Smith invited his closest friends, Inspector Victor Schaefer and his wife Jacqueline, to a dinner to celebrate his birthday. A few hours later, all the occupants in that house had been changed. Some were dead, others mentally scarred forever by the events of that night. So, what happened to the distinguished dinner guests on that evening? Perhaps we'll never know. But two clues have led to much speculation. Found outside the study window, a charred umbrella with a curved red handle, and found inside the house, a blood-stained copy of Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. For one person, this night represented an ending to 1,000 years of darkness, and an ending to 10 years of light. But for everyone else, is there no end to this one night of hell? But before we go on, Craig, let's hear the original trailer.
Doctor Who, Master.
My dearest friends, I write this letter in the hope that you will do me the greatest of favours. On the 23rd of this month, I would be honoured if you would join me here in my home for dinner. It is 10 years since my arrival in this town, an anniversary I feel I cannot possibly ignore. You've both treated me with such kindness and friendship. For the most part, the last 10 years have been more than I could ever have hoped for. Of course, recently, Perfugium has become a darker place. But for one night at least, let's forget about the darkness and spend a pleasant evening enjoying good food, fine wine, music, perhaps even some parlour games. Please help me to make my birthday, if you can call it that, a night to remember. A night to remember. So, Jacqueline, Victor, I look forward to a pleasant and relaxing evening in your company. Yours, Dr. John Smith.
There we go. It's quite an intriguing build-up, the fact saying Dr. John Smith, and we automatically think, hang on a minute, but disfigured?
Oh, it's a masterpiece of misdirection, the whole thing.
Yeah, it definitely is, because it doesn't go where we expect to start with. So how did you find coming back to this one? How did you find the whole setup? That first episode, well, it's a Doctor Light.
Very much so. It is magnificent, the story. I think whenever I've listened to it before, I've doubtless listened to it as part of the Old Enemies trilogy or quadrilogy as it became, or as part of a run in that kind of solo period of the Seventh Doctor, and it's just one of those stories. And in doing it in either of those ways, unfortunately diminishes it, certainly as part of the Enemies trilogy or quadrilogy, because the others are rather more action-packed. I think I've always found Master has been pushed into the background, and its relative slowness, well, it's not just relative slowness, it is quite a slow story by any objective means. And when you are comparing that with the flashes and bangs of Omega or Davros, it doesn't really fit particularly well with those two stories, which are considerably more lively. Listening to it in isolation, and probably for the first time in the thick end of 20 years, I absolutely loved it. If you're asking particularly about the first episode, I can rarely think of anything more evocative than just that old house in Perfugium, and the maid and the copper coming round with his wife. It's very Edwardian, very Chimes of Midnight-esque in that cosy yet unsettling aura that the sound design and of course the script give it.
It's very cleverly done, because we know that it's a future world. There's mention of Schaefer being an adjudicator.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, it's all set against this sort of, as you say, like a Victorian world where things are very much, you can almost like picture a fire-lit room, just sort of, gas lamps and everything like that. It's very oldie-worldy. And I think by having David Arlington's music, again, sort of tying back to Excelis, it has that kind of feel of sort of bringing out that second chapter, that it just feels very much period.
Yes, it's something I guess Star Trek, the original series, was probably a lot more guilty of than Doctor Who ever was, in having those human colonies that are built around a particular theme. I think there's Planet of the Irishman somewhere in Star Trek TOS, but this is much more subtly done. Of course, yes, you're right. It is the future. There is an adjudicator. We're left in no doubt that this is probably 23rd century, something like that, whenever the new adventures and the adjudicators really came to the fore in Doctor Who fiction. So we know that, but it's essentially irrelevant to the rest of the story.
I think it's just the character building we get so very clearly established early on. We know that Victor is in the adjudicators, and he's being stressed out by this case that he's trying to crack, with bodies being found, young women in particular. We get St. Jacqueline, there's something more to her. We don't quite know early on, but she seems to have a very very close relationship with John Smith, and it's just so wonderfully played by the three of them. Anything with Philip Maddock is going to be worth listening to, but the late Anne Riddler, Gemma Corwin, of course, in Wheel in Space, and Geoffrey Beevers, they absolutely carry this. To me, listening to it, I just thought I could see this on stage. You wouldn't need more than a set. You'd be perfect with that.
No, very much so. And in that early episode, as you quite rightly say, it's completely Doctor Light. And the way that the story shapes up, as very occasionally you find in Doctor Who fiction, and particularly with Big Finish, I feel very churlish saying this, sometimes stories are just so good you think this is kind of wasted on a Doctor Who. Not that I don't love Doctor Who, of course, it's just that having a Doctor Who label attached to it is going to prevent it getting to a wider audience. I know full fine well, of course, that were it just to be released as an audio without a Doctor Who label on it, the reality is it would sell far fewer because it's only us that buy these things. But Master is so clever like that. I'm reminded of more recently the 4-part River Song box set where she is once again in a house and it's lots of convoluted stuff about families. And it was just fascinating. And re-listening to Master just the other day reminded me very much of that intricate character building that you can just lose yourself in.
Very much so. And as it goes on, of course, the Doctor arrives, screaming at the window, on fire. I remember that DWM illustration so well when they did their preview of it. And it's an incredible performance from McCoy, especially very much in the TV movie kind of mode where he's quieter, he's not so intense and in your face. A very, very different performance, very measured and controlled.
Oh, he absolutely owns these types of stories. I was never the biggest fan of Sylvester McCoy on TV, even in his last season when he does calm down just a little. But that was more, I think, to do with how old I was at the time, just about the wrong age to be enjoying Doctor Who. 38, no, sorry. It wasn't right for me then. Later, of course, when Big Finish came to the fore and we were treated to the 5th, 6th and 7th Doctors early on, because I preferred Peter Davison and Colin Baker, I tended to gravitate slightly more towards those stories. I was slightly happier when one of those came through the letterbox as back in the day. But I very quickly realised once we started getting things like Night Thoughts and of course this as Master, when you get Sylvester McCoy doing that darker, deeper stuff that the books had worked so hard to concentrate on that aspect of his persona, he absolutely shines.
Couldn't disagree with a word of that. I think he's very much in control, yet losing control throughout. But it's all, he's still keeping so calm and still throughout it. It's quite incredible when you look at Joe Lidster's previous story, The Rapture, had not gone down well, being set in Ibiza, partying, drug taking and sort of dealing with depression, and it did not go down well, perhaps because Doctor Who audiences were not familiar with a lot of this going out clubbing and element things, which I was doing a lot of sort of around this time.
I agree. Rave culture was not a particularly large aspect of my life, but gigs and clubs were, but just perhaps we were not in that scene. But no, I couldn't stand it either, The Rapture, and I must confess I've never gone a particular bundle on Joe Lidster's work. Not that not saying that the man can't write, that would be extremely disingenuous. It's just they don't often resonate with me, and I think in earlier listenings Master suffered a little bit from that as well. It was okay, Sylvester McCoy, who I'd had to kind of like reach a bit to try and enjoy. Joe Lidster, who doesn't always kind of hit the mark for me, despite the fact that his stories are good. And that's kind of left Master never one of my must re-listen to that pile. So I'm eternally grateful to you for suggesting that we do this one to force me into listening to it in isolation and thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe's work's always struck a chord with me. I think we're pretty much of a similar age, and we've obviously had similar experiences going out clubbing and such likes, and being in there and sort of probably encountering very similar types of people. So yeah, that's always been something that I've got on with. So, but hey, and he's a lovely fellow too. He likes my legs.
I'm delighted to hear that.
Yes, very much. So am I, actually. It's nice when you get a compliment. So, yeah, I think the cast, that's what we need to say, just how incredibly good they are. All of the guest cast, but particularly Philip Maddock and Anne Riddler and Geoffrey Beevers together, you believe that these are people who've known each other a long time.
Oh, you would pay such good money to go and see a three-hander at the theatre. And so sorry, you said this a little bit earlier, that this could be something staged as a play. Just completely by coincidence, I had been watching the War Games. Was the last TV I watched before listening to this. And Philip Maddock, he's too often remembered just as being Solon from Brain of Morbius, and forgetting his other Doctor Who credits, and indeed his other work. I love him as the Warlord in the War Games. And so I was absolutely captivated by his performance in that just very recently. And then putting on Master just in the last couple of days and hearing those rich, plummy tones come through, again, very Edwardian, very Victorian, and then catching that very, very slight Welsh hint in there, and it suddenly struck me exactly who it was, the glorious Philip Maddock.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And Anne Riddler is, again, playing a very complex character who on the surface looks like she's, here we go, I'm just a loving, doting wife. I run a charity. And again, there's an awful lot going on in there.
Yes, I'm nice to the disadvantaged.
But why are you nice to the disadvantaged? Yeah. And again, we've got some young performers there with Charlie Hayes as Jade, of course, Wendy Padbury's daughter.
I completely missed that was her, and equally, what I've been listening to recently is the Zoe versus the Company Companion Chronicles, in which Charlie Hayes features extremely heavily, and completely missed that she was Jade.
And of course, we do get that revelation as to who Jade is in part 4, as the mystery builds up as to what has happened to the Master, where's his memory gone, why doesn't he remember what's going on, what's the Doctor up to. Very, very new adventures.
Oh, so new adventures. I think the big reveal is the cliffhanger to episode 3. And I remember thinking this time, as I'm sure that I've done every time, well, this isn't quite Doctor Who-y. We don't often play with characters like that unless we are hand-waving them away into being some kind of into some sort of cabal with the toy maker and the great intelligence or the Eternal, something like that. It very much came from, certainly in 2003, very popular Death from the Sandman series. That's very much what it summoned up for me, and I wouldn't be particularly surprised if that's where Joe Lidster was aiming.
I think that it's just the whole revelation that Jade is death, and there's the hints are all there. They're telling us that green is the colour of death here, and it's just the hints are there, building up the fact that the house that was bequeathed to the Master, or John Smith, is in black and green, and it's just sort of like, yeah, it's there, and it's just so when the revelation comes, it's like, of course, and just like brilliant.
Yeah, you shouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. But we are. It's still, I remember Absolutely. First time around thinking, this is so new adventures. Death, yay!
Oh, it's completely new adventures, isn't it? Dark Seventh Doctor, Death, with the suggestion of Times Champion, which of course they were so hot on back in the day. I wonder if Master or the outline for it was ever thought of originally by Joe Lidster in book form.
It wouldn't surprise you, would it, if it was, because it feels very, very much in that territory.
No.
And of course, when it boils down to it, this is a story pretty much about early days of the Doctor and the Master and the relationship and what happened when the school bully got killed. And the person who did the killing was not who you expect.
Absolutely. Not only do we get this hint into the Doctor and the Master's early life, suggesting in this that they were boyhood friends, not just university, academy, that kind of relationship which we may have had suggested to us in the past. This feels to me the earliest I can remember that they would have been together in any medium. I'm sure I've forgotten all manner of things from stuff that Gary Russell probably wrote. But yes, here they are, out playing like Smeagol and Deagle, and they run into this fella Torvik, who is a bit of a school bully. Has Gallifrey so often seems to paint its academic experiences very much like it's Mallory Towers or
At least it
Hogwarts.
wasn't Anzor.
Oh, thank the great maker. Yes, that would have actually ruined the whole thing. And yes, and so they have a playground fight, as it would seem, a boys' fight, and it all goes horribly, horribly wrong. And they unfortunately manage to kill the bully, and that sets one of them off onto the darkest path you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, and it's the way it's done, because there's obviously so much in predestiny and everything like that. Is when that moment comes to tell you, wow, and therefore you understand the guilt that one of them has felt towards the other, and why they have been always trying to sort of forgive them no matter what goes on.
Absolutely, the centuries of guilt that would have instilled does go a long way to explaining why far too often, to the point of ridiculousness, that forgiveness or compassion is shown to the one character by the other.
Yeah, and it's the performance. We've talked about Sylvester McCoy, but Geoffrey Beevers is he's incredible. I mean, if this was a theatre performance, as you say, in a non-Doctor Who thing, he would be winning awards for that kind of thing, because he's so effing good. I mean, those moments early doors where he's going between being lovely John Smith and then the Master comes in and talks to the Doctor, and it's just, and you can tell it's been done live in studio. There's no edits involved. It's so brilliantly done. It's all in the performance.
You've got such professionals in this show. Not saying that Big Finish are hiring amateurs left, right, and centre, but you can just tell these are seasoned people at the top of their game, despite the fact that in many cases they were probably quite elderly. I know this is 2003. I am not entirely sure how old Geoffrey Beevers is, but I know he's still with us. But I fear we have lost a couple more from this show.
Yeah, just think Anne Riddler. Yeah, she's passed away. Philip Maddox passed away. But thankfully we still get Sylvester and Geoffrey with us. And yeah, it's just, you cannot buy class, and that's very much what you get from these older British actors, and it so comes across in the performance.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. It's class. You're absolutely correct.
The atmosphere, coming back to that, just as we build up towards the end, is just, I mean, I think McCoy, just the sadness in him and the regret and everything just towards the end, as the story concludes, he's fantastic. This is definitely one of his best audio performances, that it's so measured and controlled, and then when the emotion does come, it's proper. We can see where it's coming from.
Very much so, and I don't wish to cast aspersions on Sylvester McCoy's acting, but perhaps sometimes he has been directed poorly, that some of his more emotive scenes, particularly on the TV, do come across as the tiniest bit gauche and are a little difficult to stomach sometimes. If his Doctor had been, from the start, this brooding, darker figure, what a different world it might be. Mm-hmm. Whether that would have been successful for Joe Public, whether John Nathan Turner would have allowed it, I think is that would be nonsensical. I don't think it would have flown a flag for a second. But how nice it would have been if we had an almost Capaldi-like general annoyance at the word. Not annoyance, that's not fair. If Capaldi was annoyed, just that darker, deeper, introspective, calmer McCoy that we see, thanks to so many of the Big Finish audios, that he not only can play, but can play extraordinarily well.
Agreed. And it's funny because I interviewed McCoy the day after Deep Breath went out, and he'd watched it and he said, yep, Capaldi's fantastic. That's what he was wanting to do. And just think, yeah, if only.
I'm sure there were numerous past Doctors at that point thinking, why didn't I have that line?
Yeah. Colin Baker being another one, especially, who who deserved so much more than he got on TV.
Very much so.
But I think it's just such a sound, tight package. I don't think there's a wasted line in there. I mean, I'm sure that if you wanted to do a special edition, you could cut it down, given that episode 4 runs, 41 minutes? But would you want to? No, of quite frankly.
No, I'd like an extended version of it. It was 3 hours long, thank you very much. Even if it's just sitting there listening to atmospheric sounds of the house and creaking away in the darkness while someone fiddles about with the Ouija board. Yeah, I'd be all over that.
Yep. Have that glass moving around. Yeah, brilliant. Well, Craig, thank you for that. Shall we pause briefly? And why don't we hear about the making of the story? Because we've got some special guests coming up. We've got writer Joe Lidster, producer-director Gary Russell. We have Charlie Hayes, and indeed, the master himself, Mr. Geoffrey Beevers.
Fantastic.
My name is Gary Russell, and I was the producer and director of Master, which was written by the superb Joe Lidster.
You must have had a hell of a lot of confidence in Joe to give him his second script. Here you go, here's the master, and the Doctor's not even going to feature in part 1.
Well, yes, I always had confidence in Joe because Joe had proven with Rapture what a good writer and a good writer of character stories. I still don't know whether Joe could write action stories, but at this point, I certainly knew he could write character stories and characters you cared about. Of course, he wasn't the original writer of Master. I mean, he knows this, obviously. So yeah, it was going to be just a Cavan Scott story. And I gave him the basic outline that I was looking for, which was amnesiac master on a planet, and obviously he has to get his memory back and become evil again, and the Doctor has to face his quandary. And that was all I gave Cav. And Cav came up with a storyline. It didn't work. So we had a lot of conversations back and forth. And in the end, I think we both mutually agreed that this wasn't going the way Cav would feel confident writing it. I think it would have been a case of, yes, I'll do it, but it's not that his heart wouldn't be in it, but he wasn't feeling the material, he wasn't feeling the way I wanted to take it. I think he was looking probably at a lot more traditional Doctor Who story. And the thing about these 3 villains things that I was doing leading up to Zagreus is that they're not enormously traditional. So he very kindly backed out. And at around the same time, who was it? Oh, it was McCloskey. It was Mark McCloskey. Of course it was. He came up with he'd submitted an idea, and I tried to turn that his was a master story, but it wasn't this kind of master story. And I remember saying to Mark, do you think you could take all these ideas and twist that into your story? He was like, no. Quite rightly, it would have just ruined. But Mark McCloskey, yeah, so he did his master story and trying to shoehorn my insane ideas into his master story didn't work. So we put that on the back burner and said we'd come back to it at some point in the future, which sadly we never did. It's a shame. I'd love to work with Mark. Great writer, nice person. Never got round to actually doing an audio script with him, which is a shame. So then I got all these ideas, and I think I was probably sitting in the pub with Ian, and Joe was probably there, just about to hit pint number 3. So the first sip of that third pint, and then Joe's completely paralytic and gone, and you can then influence him and say, I think you should agree to write this story, Joe, and tomorrow morning I'll remind you of all the things you agreed to do. And that's probably what we did. We got Joe drunk and said, you're going to write this master story. And he took my original notes that I'd given to Cav, but I gave him no idea what Cav had done in his outline or what Mark had done in his outline. And suddenly I had the story I wanted. There, boom, brilliant.
Hello, I'm Joseph Lidster, and I wrote the Doctor Who story Master. Well, it was quite interesting because I was replacement for Cavan Scott and Mark Wright, or was it just Cav by himself? But I was replacement for either just Cav or both of them. And they were doing Project Twilight or Project something. And Gary came to me and just said, would you write this story about the Master? And actually that was probably a really good thing for me as a writer, again, because the first one was very much, other than Ace's brother and so on, the Rapture was very much my thing. It was my idea. I'll play around with it. I would never have pitched to write about the Master. I don't have a great interest in the Master as a character. So there wasn't really the pressure there in that I don't really care about Davros and the Master and so on like that in the same. I don't necessarily be, maybe because I'm slightly less of a Doctor Who fan than everybody else involved. I was, I suppose, just more excited about telling the story than about it being part of a villains trilogy or anything like that. I was quite excited because it was anniversary, 40th anniversary, wasn't it? So I was quite excited that it was involved with the 40th anniversary, but actually, tackling the iconic villain or anything like that wasn't a big pressure on me, no.
I think the only thing we had a slight and ah about was the personification of Death as a character, which is a very sort of New Adventures thing. I mean, Death was actually a character in the New Adventures books. And actually, I reused Charlie to play Death in a Benny years later. But at this point, I was and Joe had to really persuade me that this was going to be fine, this idea of the personification of Death. And what sold it to me was the twist that the reason that the Master is evil isn't because he killed a little boy when he was a little boy, but the Doctor did it and has forgotten it. And his mind has been altered by this Death character as a form of punishment. And then suddenly the whole play becomes crime and punishment. It becomes all about how much damage lies and lies on top of lies and second chances. And it was pure soap opera in the best possible way.
I was a big fan of the New Adventures. That's why Victor's an adjudicator. And with Death, I think, I suppose I just thought, I don't want just me making up some silly alien, one-off alien to explain absolutely 100% why the Master is evil and why the Doctor is. And I think I just thought actually they'd had Death in the New Adventures. I've not read things like The Sandman or anything like that. That sort of stuff doesn't particularly, I'm sure it's amazing, but it doesn't particularly appeal to me. So I'm not from that background. I'm not a comics fan or anything like that. So my experience of Death as a character is from the New Adventures. And I just thought, I'm writing a horror movie. I'm writing a full-on, hopefully psychological, but also scary to listen to horror movie. I don't want, the bling blongs from Xerox turning up at the end of episode 3 and going, well, yes, we turned the Master into this because of this. And I thought, I wanted it to be the most perfect thing. And, I suppose I was using it's a supernatural story, but because the New Adventures introduced Death, I thought, well, she counts. She's an Eternal or whatever they are. Gary said, he wanted character there. My slight issue with the Master is, I think in the new series, they really do push for him to be a character with, or her, let them, a character with arcs and journeys and really play much more on, does the Master fancy the Doctor? Does she or he respect the Doctor? Do they love him? What's going on? Whereas I do think in the original series, people will say, oh, but Roger Delgado. And it's like, Roger Delgado is amazing. But I imagine was terrifying if you're watching that as a kid. He's amazing, but his character is, I want to control the universe. I want to run the universe. Well, that's a bit of a weak motivation. There's no why. There's no why do you want to? Do you believe, what do you believe in? And so it was quite, I looked at it and I just went, well, what could I do with the Master? What does the Master do? And then I thought, well, actually, the thing the Master does, and it's pretty much the first thing we see the Master do, is the Master kills someone. And the Master is actually responsible for so much death, obviously. Metuala or Oriontis is gone, it's like the Master's killed a lot of people. And I just thought, actually, that's the sort of side effect, regardless of anything else the Master does, regardless of whether you go, well, the Master wants to impress the Doctor or the Master wants to destroy the Doctor or whatever. One thing the Master does is kill sorts of people and enjoys it. The Master enjoys killing people. You see that a lot in the stories. He kills people he doesn't need to kill. And then you get to the survival and then, it ties in with the themes of survival. But, he's quite happy hunting. He's quite happy sitting there, killing off innocent people from Berryville. And I just thought that was an interesting thing to explore. And so actually what I did was I got a biography of Geoffrey Dahmer. And because I'm very interested in, I don't believe people are born evil. So I'm very interested in what makes people evil. What makes someone an abuser. And, it's not in any way excusing Geoffrey Dahmer. So using Geoffrey Dahmer as an example, obviously Geoffrey Dahmer did horrific things, but you read a biography and you go, oh, there's something, oh, there's something, there's something. And you look at these things and they all come together, and then he kills an animal, and you start seeing, you can see it in this biography, he stops seeing people as equal living creatures, and they exist for him to do what we all exist, for someone like Geoffrey Beevers to do what he wants to. And his thing is he gets turned on by what he gets turned on by. And I thought that was an interesting journey through the Master. So it came from that, where I went, which I know he's done a sort of, it's very deliberately slightly dream sequency at the end, where we find out, we think the Master killed a child by accident, which someone was written actually, and the twist is that the Doctor did it, and Death came along and went, oh, but I'll make you good, which every other Doctor Who story is ignored, quite frankly. I'd love to see Missy turn around and go, well, remember when you hit someone over the head with a rock, Doctor Who? So thankfully every other story's ignored it. But so it was that journey of, if you accidentally, as a child, kill a child, and they accidentally kill a bully, is that what steps could that lead to? And that's what I wanted to master. So there's a lot of exploration of, it's probably GCSE standard exploration of Jekyll and Hyde and evil and stuff. But, I think it's fun. And it was exploring. That's what I enjoyed about it, exploring what could have set the Master on this path.
And then you had Geoffrey. But his performance is fantastic. And there's so much power and emotion in that second episode, because we recorded it in order. That's the point. Other than the stuff with Dan Barzotti, we recorded the play completely in order. So it builds. And that had been a request from Geoffrey when he read the script. He'd said, can we do this? Because it's quite easy to do. Can we do it in order? Because we can build to that ending. And I was like, perfect. Episodes 1 and 2 on that day, episodes 3 and 4 on that day. And that's exactly how we did it. We did it like a play. We also did it in that we didn't do any read-throughs. We recorded from the moment we went. Because it was effectively 3-handers, occasionally a 4-hander, we actually did no rehearsing, press play and record on the machines, and then did any pickups we needed to do. Because if you have 4 brilliant actors in a room together doing a play as well written as that, they're not going to cock it up. You're not going to need very many pickups. And we absolutely didn't. We really didn't. It was just like we did 3 pages at a time, break, put the page on the floor, pick up the next 3 pages, on we go. And that's how we did the play across those 2 days. And it was fantastic.
Hello, I'm Geoffrey Beevers, and I am the Master.
That was the second one involving a Master. And I know it's a lot of people's favourites when you talk to the fans. And it's slightly different, isn't it, from a lot of the others, in that you don't really know it's the Master. He wasn't obviously and altogether evil in the way that he is in the majority of the ones that I do. It sort of gives him the chance. I do enjoy those stories that gives the Master a chance to be more normal and to try for some kind of to bring him back to normality from his evil ways. We all have the potentiality for evil things inside us. It's just the privilege of the actor is to be able to express that without any consequences. Yes, so that's quite nice.
The thing with Geoffrey Beevers is, it's very easy to go, oh, that voice, oh, that voice, oh, that voice. And it's like, it's not just the voice, it's the performance is astonishing. He's such a good actor. He's a really genuinely brilliant actor. And again, he really brought stuff to this. And I think episode 2 is mostly him and Sylvester just chatting, isn't it? That makes it sound really dull. It's 2 blokes just chatting away. But it's talking a pretty interesting chat. But he's so good. He's able to just turn, and, there is the bit towards the end where he does become the Master, I think. He's just terrifying. Yeah, and such a lovely bloke. Really, really nice bloke. We had a right laugh. We went to a signing. We did a signing at 10th Planet, the shop. Not the planet. That'd be weird. We did a signing at the 10th Planet shop. And again, it had a gorgeous cover by Clay of the house with lights coming out of the window. It was such a long day. There were about 1 million people signing stuff. Like everybody who'd ever played a Dalek was signing stuff. So it was just long and relentless. And, you couldn't really chat or anything. And by the end, certainly I was waning, and Geoffrey, was, and he just got given one of the covers to sign by someone, and he drew an arrow pointing at the lit up window and went, "I live here," and then signed it, handed it back. The person was gutted because they just wanted a signature, so we had to give them a different cover and keep that one. So yeah, he was a lovely bloke, and he's so good. Yeah.
What I found quite disconcerting was having the Master having a lovely house and then his friends come round. And if you don't think of the Master having friends like Victor and Jacqueline.
Yeah. Again, I suppose a bit like with the Rapture, I'm very interested in friendship. Friendship's such an important part of my life. And it isn't something you often necessarily see a big deal of. And I mean, obviously then in Master, it does become a bit of a love triangle. A love triangle with Geoffrey Beevers with that crispy face. What a delight. But yeah, they needed, again, I think as a writer, you realise as you develop and so on, you can't just write an essay about, well, why would the Master be like this? So it needed a story and it needed mystery. And actually one thing I'd been asked to do was set it on an alien planet. Don't have a huge interest in writing. At that point, this was before Russell had brought back Doctor Who, and you realise, alien planets could be like, full of fun people rather than sort of people with things on their heads talking about peace treaties and things. And so I deliberately made it a very old-fashioned, sort of Victorian, whatever Dickensian world that they lived on, which was really good because it meant I had to do no research and I could just make it up and everybody talks a bit posh. And this is the word we'll use for hospital because that sounds a bit that kind of thing. So yeah, I should maybe do that more often because that was good fun. And I'll look up a Latin word. Well, put a Latin word in it. That'll maybe look clever. And and I haven't heard it in years, but I remember the cast being amazing, but I remember just they did what I wanted, which was that real sense of creeping tension, because the Master can't have friends. This is not going to end well for those two people arriving at his house. For me, the exciting thing was the twists and turns along the way and how basically they're going to die because they're obviously not going to have a happy life if they've come to the Master's house for dinner. And toying with that and toying with the tense drama of that, which is again it's one of the reasons why I didn't have Sylvester in the first episode, because I really wanted to explore the Master and his friendship with these two people and their hypocrisies. They're very, very hypocritical characters, and explore that and do all that. And then actually you sort of get the impression that had that dinner gone on, you get the impression that had the Doctor not turned up, actually the night might have gone okay. And the idea was I wanted to do, so there were two things. One was I wanted to really explore the house and those characters and the maid and the setup and set up this murder mystery type thing that was going to happen and the sort of things that were happening in the town and so on. I really wanted to do that without the Doctor being there because I just wanted to really do that. But the second thing was I wanted to, the story reverses the roles. So the cliffhanger of a classic series story with the Master in is usually dun dun dun, it's the Master, and I wanted to revert that with the Master in that the Master is the main character. It's his house, his story. Welcome in. Oh, let's talk about those mysteries. Who could it be? Who could be killing those girls and so on. And then cliffhanger, the Doctor turns up because actually the Doctor is responsible for it all because of his deal with death. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, the Doctor is responsible for all the murders as well because he put them. Oh dear. Happy anniversary, Doctor Who. I've turned you into a mass murderer.
And then, so the two guest stars I brought into it, Philip Maddock, David Bickerstaff had introduced me to, as he had so many people. And I'd said to Philip, would you be interested in playing this part? It's not a villain's part. It's not an evil part. He's a detective. And he said, yes. He didn't read the script first, but then he phoned me it was about 3 days before the recording. And he phoned up. It was the only time he rang me through the whole process. And he phoned me up and said, I need to talk to you about this script. And I just thought, oh God, no. At this stage, what hell? Oh God. He said, I just want to say that this is perfect. This script is perfect. This should be on television. This is so good. This is perfect. I just wanted to say before I got to studio that this is perfect. I was like, and he's like, oh, no, nothing else. I don't want to change anything. I just want to say it's all absolutely perfect. And that was it. I was like, okay, well, I'll see you on Thursday. which is brilliant. And he was very, very... Joe popped into the studio. I don't think Joe was there for very much of it, because I think he, unlike Ratcher, where I think he had been in the studio, I think this one he was a little bit nervous. He certainly didn't come in the first day, probably because I told him not to. But he certainly came in the second day because I know he was there and Dan Barzotti was around. And I think he was very nervous, and all these actors praising this script just, made him glow, so he should. And then my fourth and final casting was Anne Riddler as Jacqueline Schaefer. Anne is an actress I'd wanted to work with all my life. I had met Anne in 1974 or 5 when she was doing a TV show called Kizzy, which was produced and directed by Dorothea Brooking. And my mum was working on it. She was chaperoning one of the girls, not the girl playing Kizzy, but one of the other girls, and had said to Dorothea Brooking, my son thinks he's going to be an actor one day. Can he come up for a day to sit and act in rehearsal rooms and just see what's going on? And Dorothy was like, yeah, as long as he shuts up in the corner and doesn't make a nuisance to himself, yes. So I did. I came along and I walked into the room and I saw Anne Riddler. And I said to my mum, she was in the Tomorrow People yesterday. And my mum was like, shush, be quiet. Well, she was in the Tomorrow People. Shush, be quiet. And I remember walking up to Anne at the lunchtime and saying, you were in the Tomorrow People yesterday? She was like, yes, I was. And we got talking and she said, so, what do you want to do? I want to be an actor. I'm going to be an actor one day and then I'm going to be a famous director. And the sort of thing you say when you're 10 or 11 years old. And she had been so lovely and so encouraging and so charming on that one day that I'd met her, that she had stayed in my head as somebody I always wanted to work with. So I got her in for this through her agent. And we were chatting at the lunchtime on the first day of the recording of this. And I told her this story. Now, she's probably a very good actress, but she said she remembered it. She didn't remember me, but she remembered the whole sort of Kizzy thing and somebody being there that was, a child needed talking to and putting off being an actor. And I said, that's, I've wanted to work with you ever since then because I owe my entire career to you being positive to me on that day. You could have been totally dismissive or totally disinterested. And so that was the part I got Anne in to do. And I'm so grateful that I did. It is very sad, actually, now looking at Master and knowing that neither Anne or Philip are with us anymore and thinking, gosh, But then this keeps happening with Big Finish stuff. I look at the stuff that we did at the time, and so many people who worked for me at Big Finish, who I have had the absolute honor of directing, just aren't there anymore. And it's quite heartbreaking, really. And at the same time, incredibly gratifying to know that you had the chance to sit there and say, I've directed Anne Riddler and Philip Maddock. That's pretty damn cool.
And the rest of the cast aren't bad either, particularly with some people with a bit of a Doctor Who pedigree there, and Philip Maddock and Anne Riddler.
Yeah, I mean, just astonishing. It's quite difficult to talk about it because I just went in and I was just like, wow, look at these. Again, it was actually quite interesting for me because I'd never written for older people before. I must have written for older people. I'll say, at uni again, but the Ratchet is very much, there's an older character in it, but this was very much a cast much older than I am, or certainly was at the time. I'm their age now. And I remember Anne being gorgeous. She was so much fun. She was really, I just wanted to go out for dinner with her and get drunk with her because she had a real sort of bite to her. She was great. And Philip was I just stood there in awe of Philip Maddock. And then we had Wendy Padbury's daughter, Charlie Hayes, as Jade, and that was great because she'd not done any acting. She must have done acting, but I think it was her first Big Finish or something. I know so the others were all very, very, centuries of experience behind them, whereas she was much younger. And I remember she'd highlighted the script and she'd written notes on where her performance level should be and so on. And I think the older actors are much more, oh, we don't need to do that. We just go in and say the words because we can do it. And they were just so good. It was such a lovely couple of days. Really hot. It was really hot and sunny those 2 days, which took complete contrast to what we were recording. I just think there are, will I ever have a better cast than that in my life? Probably not, Sylvester, Geoffrey Beevers, Philip Maddock, and Anne Riddler, and then Charlie, who I think is astonishing. Just an amazing, I think I just sat very quietly in the green room and listened to people talk because they were fascinating.
So we also had in this Charlie playing Death, playing Jade and then Death. Jade being the colour of death on Perfugium. Oh, I remember the word Perfugium. Charlie Hayes, obviously, is Wendy Padbury's daughter. I've known Charlie for donkey's years. I've known her since she was a little girl, I suppose. And it was just lovely, just saying to her, do you want to come and do this part? And she said, I said, well, it's the maid. And she was like, oh. Who turns out to be the physical embodiment of death and is responsible for everything that happens in the play and is a chance to go completely evil, but never over the top. She has to be so understated. I said, this isn't vamping it up. This is actually just playing it totally cool and cold. And she relished that. I don't think she would have wanted to go big with it at all. The idea that she was playing someone who was really very understated and very laid back really appealed to her. She was brilliant, Charlie. And so, that's the thing I said earlier, when we were doing, I think it was Love and War. Of course it was. It's Love and War for Big Finish 10 years later or something. I remember calling her up and saying, got a very, very small part in this play of the character of Death. And it's only about 7 or 8 lines. But it really would be nice if it was you again. And it's with Sylvester, and she was there. She just said, yep, I'm there, I'm in. So she came back to be Death years and years later.
I'm Charlie Hayes, and I played Jade in Master.
Do you remember how Gary Russell came to cast you in this one?
Yes, I do. I mean, is it nepotism? Let's see. So let's think back to the day that Mum, so my mum is Wendy Padbury, who plays Zoe Herriot. And I think when I was about 14, she said, I've been asked to do Doctor Who conventions. And I sniggered at her and thought that sounded silly and ridiculous. And also, we hadn't watched Doctor Who in our house for a long time. And I don't know if as a teenager I'd ever seen it. And Mum said, I really think I need to watch all my old episodes and find out what the hell I did if I'm going to be interviewed about it. So we spent the weekend watching Doctor Who together, and I found it very funny when she threw giants over her shoulder and did fight scenes, and I found the whole thing hilarious. I was a teenager and it was my mum, and that was ridiculous. And I showed very little interest in her going to conventions, other than I was thrilled to hear what kind of went on, but I showed very little interest in going until she said, I'm going to, many, many years later, she said, I'm in 2003, she said, I've been invited to a convention in Australia. And I said, when's our flight? I'll be there right with you. So suddenly I took a great interest in Doctor Who, and there was a sea of great people in attendance. Included in that was Gary Russell. So we had on this trip to Australia, and Gary Russell was there, and I met him, and we all spent some time together. And so from that, it then came out that I was an actor and that I do voiceovers. And he said, "Would you be up for doing a Big Finish at some point?" And I said, "Of course I would." And lo and behold, sometimes you think it's going to just be something that's said while you've gate crashed a convention in Sydney, but actually it transpired that he did invite me, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it.
It's not a bad part. I mean, I think the fact that she's not who you think she is, the fact you've got Geoffrey Beevers there, you've got Philip Maddock, Anne Riddler, you're lots of actors of repute, and
yes,
you're sort of just lurking there in the background. So that must have been, quite a thrill for you working with, actors of that caliber.
Well, it really was. I've grown up around actors, and I've grown up, whether it's from mum and dad, my dad's an actor as well, whether it's from them knowing or meeting people of that caliber through them, or whether it's mum when she was an agent. I've always been surrounded by actors. So I try and be very casual about the whole thing. But I was really starstruck. In actual fact, embarrassingly, when we were I tried to play down the being starstruck, and there's always a very relaxed atmosphere when you're doing a big finish. But I really, really clearly remember. So when we're recording, you're in these little kind of individual booths, but glass booths, and I was next to Sylvester McCoy, and there was a scene, and he had this great long speech, and normally you're listening to what everyone else is saying because you've got your headphones on, but you're not looking at anyone. And he did this great long speech, and I remember thinking, he's absolutely brilliant. It sounds so brilliant to listen to, and he's so engaging. And I found myself being lost in what he was saying, and then listening to him, and I found myself like gazing at him, and this whole speech emerged and erupted, and it became bigger and bigger and more dramatic and more theatrical. And then when I really tuned into what he was saying, no, seriously, when is Jade going to read her lines and then interject and actually come in with her line? And I had totally stopped reading the script. So that's what being starstruck can do. It can really humiliate yourself. Everyone was very good humored about it, but everyone just watched me having totally forgotten that I was actually at work. So yeah, that's how that pans out. I think that was the first time I've met him, but I've met lots of people at conventions. We all have. And, it's anyway, that's what being starstruck will do to you. He was so engaging.
What do you remember from the recording sessions, other than being starstruck?
It was my birthday, and I don't know, it's quite strange that it's quite strange. I suppose I was young enough. I mean, I was probably too old to be thinking about my birthday, but I did. And then you think, why would I want to tell a group of strangers that it's my birthday? I could probably pipe down about it, but that's not really my style. So people very generously celebrated my birthday. I didn't know anyone apart from Gary when we recorded, and I remember arriving, and there's so much, it's always, the nature of these sorts of jobs is that it's always new kid, first day at school kind of syndrome, really. So it's always nerve-wracking, covered up by a lot of enthusiasm and kind of bluster, I suppose. And then maybe that's why people are so sort of lively, engaging, friendly. There's a lot of chat, and maybe, I don't know, I don't want to tar everyone with the same brush as me, but you kind of, it's what you do to hide your nervousness, I suppose, is go the opposite way and then start regaling people with theatrical anecdotes. At least that's what I think I've learned to do. But so I remember that. And Gary Russell is just the most warm and calming person to be around. So I felt really in good hands. And yeah. And so that was that. And I suppose I hadn't done so much voiceover work by that time. There's never really much training that goes into any of it. And I think you go in and you think, right, well, there's a microphone and there's some headphones. I guess I'll speak into that and listen into that. It's kind of, I don't know, you sort of wait for you wait for the obvious cues to happen, presume that somebody's going to tell you. It's not the most proactive of stories, but yes, I sort of remember being quite nervous, quite timid, quite unsure as to what I was going to do, how we were going to do it. And then they don't always do the scenes in order, and then you think there must be some good reasons for that, and so I'll just politely wait and look forward to the very delicious lunch that Toby will have made, which of course I presume everybody references.
This is good. It's so good. Is your birthday the 30th of July or the 31st?
At first.
There we go. See, I just did a quick check there on the website saying what date was it recorded.
2003.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And when I've been to conventions or been in the vicinity where Mum is, which is invariably in the vicinity of something Doctor Who-ish, people always ask me about it. That's one of the big finishes that people always ask about, because I think they might be lying, but I don't think so. They told me that they really love it, and that always comes up.
I've noticed actually there that in the cast, Anne Riddler was in your mum's first Doctor Who and Philip Maddock was in her last one. So there's a wee parallel there.
Well, there are the parallels. Of course, the parallel that Mum is most furious about is one time when she was listening to the Seven Keys to Doomsday. Yeah, when she heard me in it playing her part. She's always said to me, it's one thing that you did the job. It's another thing that I didn't even know that you did the job. She quite liked it. She's been very generous about it, but didn't intimate that maybe I have definitely stolen one of her parts.
I'd have thought as an agent and your mother, she would be delighted for you.
You'd think so. You would think. And yet here we are. Here we are. We'll have words. It's fine. We'll have words.
It works, not just because the script is great, long, but great, but it works because you've got such a classy cast. Dan Barzotti, I had seen in a theatre above a pub. He's a friend of Conrad's, I think. They might have even been in that play together. I can't remember. But he was a friend of Conrad's and we went to see the play. No, I think I went to see it with Conrad. I think Conrad was in there. I think I went to see it with Conrad, but he was a friend of Conrad's. And I thought he's a brilliant actor. Superb. And so eventually this part came up and boom, suddenly I had a nice assassin who was only actually in studio for about an hour and a half. Did all of his and Sylvester's scenes at the beginning of the day, beginning of the second day, I think it was actually. Did it all in one go, got them out of the way.
Of course, the big revelation comes that Jade is in fact Death. So was that a part that you ever aspired to play beforehand?
I mean, sometimes I look like Death, most of the time, but I don't necessarily have parts that I would desperately want to play. I do love parts that kind of go off in different directions, and that's fantastic. So I loved it. I don't know necessarily that if I'm honest, that I'd sort of sat and dreamt of being Death. But I really loved doing it. Gary Russell, I think I remember him asking me to really vamp it up. And by the time we got to Death, and I remember thinking, you betcha, I will, this time I'll do that. And then we'd do another take and I'd go, was that vampish enough? And he'd go, yeah, why don't you try it more vampish? So I'd try it. And actually it's one of those jobs that as I've got older and that my voice is deeper and that I'm more experienced, I often think, God, I'd love to re-record that because I'd know what to do now better. It comes back to haunt me a little bit because I'd have a better idea of what I might do with it, or to be able to really kind of go for it in a way that I think could have been fun to do.
And of course, you got to reprise the part a few years later.
Yes, I did. Yeah, because I absolutely remember him bringing that out and saying, I've got a surprise for you. Yes, I remember that. I loved it. I loved it. It's really brilliant. And I don't know that there was necessarily enough to do with it because I think they'd put filters on it, hadn't they? In the first, they'd kind of put the sound effects on it to give it that really kind of deathly quality. So, yeah.
And the other thing that I loved about it, which Joe worked really hard on because it's very difficult to do when you're a relatively new writer, is it's the Doctor and 4 other characters, one of whom isn't even part of the story. He's just the person the Doctor's telling the story to. And that's very hard across 4 episodes of Doctor Who. But what he did is he wrote it as if it was a stage play. I think I don't know whether he'd been talking to Rob Shearman and got some help from him, but Master is a stage play. It's straightforward. It is structured as you would see a 4-act stage play. Every episode is in one room. There's a couple of excursions as they walk to the kitchen, but generally, episode 1 is the living room, episode 2 is the library, episode 3 is the living room, episode 4 is where's dark space? The kind of thing you'd see at sort of a theatre above a pub, which is something, ironically, Joe has gone on to write very successfully for himself, which is brilliant. But Master works as a stage play. Of all the things that we ever did, people have often said, Chimes of Midnight to make a really good stage play. But the fact is that Master is the perfect Doctor Who stage play that Big Finish did. Small cast, small locations, lighting effects, sound effects, boom, and it's there. And it is just this fantastic story that even at the very end. So yes, you're not quite sure at the end really what happened to Victor, what happened to Jacqueline, even to some extent, how much of them really existed. You know, there's a way of reading that. I didn't read this at the time, but people said to me subsequently, is the whole thing taking place inside the Doctor's head? Is it all a figment of just the Doctor and Death's conversations? Did ever any of it really happen? Is it even really the Master? Or is it just a way of tormenting the Doctor? Is the play just about tormenting the Doctor? That to me is the mark of a very good play and a very unusual kind of Doctor Who play, in that different people read what that play is about in totally different ways. And I have no idea what Joe's original idea was or anything for that, but it is interesting that people see it in different ways. And so, yeah, it was brilliant.
It's just an incredibly clever story where it's the Master basically given friends and a family in this big house. And it's just such a different setting. And that's what makes it so scary.
Yes. Well, as I say, I haven't heard it for... How long is it since it was... I mean, it must be 15 or 20 years old.
2003 it came out.
So all I remember about it was that it all took place in this house, and that it was... and that it seemed like the Master was an ordinary person until it sort of twists and turns. But... and that's always very interesting to play, yeah.
And you got a really nice rapport going with Sylvester McCoy as well.
He is lovely to work with because he's just so free, and he had a huge reputation for improvisation in the theatre, and there's something sort of very sparky and exciting working with him, yeah.
Now again, this is a debut production, I think. David Darlington did post on this. He had the monster job of dealing with me having gone, yeah, we'll record it all in order and then we'll do pickups later and drop them in. Davey can drop them in. And I suspect Davey probably many times wanted to bash my head in with a blunt instrument on that one. Because usually you get if you record something, you have a scene, you have maybe a couple of takes, and then you have pickups from that scene. And the scene's only 2 or 3 pages long anyway. But at least from his point of view, from a technical point of view, the dialogue for that scene is there and the pickups are there and they're all roughly in the same place on the tape. With Master, he had to get through an entire episode's worth of recording, and then at the end of it would be random pickup lines or 7 or 8 mini little scenes, and he had to go back and literally drop them in bit by bit. I suspect he probably wanted to do very, very painful and bad things to me at the end of the day on that production. But again, his atmospherics on that are phenomenal. There are so many sound effects in that play, and they're all brilliant and they're all fantastic. And he's the big bane of Davy's life with everything with me is cat noises. He just winks and go, "Oh, there's a bloody cat in this one as well."
Yeah, just blown away by it. I mean, again, I did that thing where I like to play with the format slightly. So what I wanted to do was, one of the things I loved the 1990, whatever year it was, thing, Ghostwatch by Stephen Bulk. And what Ghostwatch does brilliantly is there's a brilliant bit where they play a clip of the girls in the bedroom and they're chased out by a light exploding. They played a clip again, and this time there's a shrouded figure stood in front of the curtain, the ghost of Ghostwatch. And they went out. But what they do is people apparently ring in and say, "We thought we saw a shrouded figure." So they played a figure again. They played a clip, and this time there is a shrouded figure. The actors presenters say they can't see anything, so they played a clip again. This time the shrouded figure isn't really there, but they draw kind of there and go, "Oh, maybe it's just a shadow." And it really, in the days before you could instantly rewind TV, that's such a clever trick, because your audience are sitting there going, "No, there was. What? No, the figure's got, I don't know." And I kind of wanted a bit similar with Master, so there's like the whispering voice. So I want you to be, when you're listening to Master, you should always be headphones. I think all Big Finish, always headphones. Put your headphones on, and I want you to be like, "Did I just hear Gary Russell whisper in my ear?" And so yeah, the finished version is, I mean, Davy's work on it is astonishing. It's got, that cliffhanger. The cliffhanger where you find out that Jade isn't Jade. Davy's work on that is possibly the best thing that's ever been done by Big Finish. The beats, the pause, when the music kicks in, the thunderstorm, the revelation. Charlie's performance as Jade is understated. The other, obviously, it wouldn't be there without the script. So I'm very proud of the end of that episode, whichever one, that must be episode 3. I think I did good work there. But I think that last 2 minutes, 5 minutes of episode 2 of Master is absolutely a combination of a director, a cast, and a sound designer and musician, all on the absolute top of their game. It's just chilling. It's beautifully, the rhythm of it is brilliant, and that's down to Davey. You know, he did an amazing job. And yeah, it's a terrifying score, really understated, which is again really nice.
In a lot of theatre and television and so forth, I'm often cast as nice people and good people. I don't often get a chance to play the baddies. I have had some quite fun parts, but it's always more interesting playing the villain than it is playing the goodie. So it's sort of, yeah. So it's been fun to do. Yeah.
Oh, what a great Playmaster is. So yes, this is part of the Villains trilogy. I would call it a trilogy. It's not really a trilogy. It just happens to be 3 stories that have got the names of the villains in the titles and very similar covers. That's the artifice, really, of what you're doing, is you decide that after this is going to be a trilogy, I'll have the covers looking the same. One's called Master, one's called Davros, one's called Omega, or would have been called Toymaker. And they just fitted in. I wanted them to go in before Zagreus, so they were kind of the lead up, each Doctor having a sort of big villain moment in the lead up to Zagreus. And there's Master, and it's just glorious. And I was really chuffed. There was a Radio Times poll recently, and I was just dead chuffed to see that it did so well in that poll, because it deserved to.
I know it did a lot better than The Rapture, but it was, I think Doctor Who fans at that time were much more happy with a bunch of older statesman-like actors talking posh in an old house than they were with young people going to Ibiza. So I look back on it and go, I'm actually very, very proud of the fact that my second story is so different to my first story. I think that's something I'm really proud of. They are two they could be by different writers. I look back on it and just go, yeah, I was really proud of it. And I love that Villains trilogy. And I love Zagreus. I know Zagreus has got its knockers, but I love Zagreus. And that I think for me was a real golden age of Big Finish, that period. And so I'm very proud to be part of that. I'm very proud to be part of that Villains trilogy in the end. Even though it wasn't a huge deal for me when I was writing it, I look back and go, you know what? For my second script, I'm up there. I'm writing a part of a trilogy with Nev Fountain, who is one of the best writers I know. He's just an astonishing writer. And Lance Parkin, the absolute king of the New Adventures. And this little old me turning up, having done one badly received Doctor Who story, turn up going, yeah, I'll do the Master. Yeah, I'll do the third on this Villains trilogy. So actually, I look back on it and go, I'm very proud that I think Master stands up alongside Omega and Davros, both of which I think were amazing. So yeah, again, I haven't heard it in years, but you have made me sort of go, I might listen to them. I might listen to the Rapture and Master today. Yeah, so I look back on it and go, I'm very proud of it. I do want to re-listen to it, actually, because, yeah, I remember episode 2 being just the Doctor and the Master chatting about evil, and probably, let's say, it's probably quite basic stuff, but that I'd love to re-listen to it and just go, does it have any plot? It's like, is it fun to listen to? I hope so. But yeah, and that episode, the cliffhanger, I want to listen to, and it's got that gorgeous framing sequence, which Gary again got an amazing actor in, presumably for quite a short amount of time, to play Death as the assassin. Oh, it's got a really sick ending, hasn't it? I kill off a kid at the end again. Death goes, there's a little girl about to bite into a flapjack and she's got a nut allergy. Happy anniversary, Doctor Who. Oh dear. Yeah, no, I look back on them very proudly, and, I owe everything to the Rapture Master, so I would not be here today if it wasn't for those.
So I put it to you, Mr. Brawley, that you were correct. Joe Lidster loves New Adventures.
Yes, he does, but I still feel very enlightened from that. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So yes, it's been a fascinating one to come back to. And of course, it was reissued more recently by Big Finish in a bundle as a sort of a box set sort of thing with the Villains trilogy. And of course, those of us who are lucky enough were able to get a copy of this in the Big Finish script book, Volume 4, where the script for this was alongside Omega and Davros and indeed Zagreus.
I might have to pick a copy of that up so that I can understand Zagreus.
It's worth looking around for. I had to get mine courtesy of my friend Robert Dick, and he was able to locate a copy because I never got it at the time. I don't know why, because I've got all the other ones. I've got the Dalek Empire script book as well, and I had the first 3 volumes, but I don't know why I didn't get Volume 4. But copies of it do still show up, so keep your eyes out, and it may help explain it for you.
I will.
Craig, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really good fun.
Always. Please invite me back. I love talking about Big Finish.
Yes, we'll discuss further about what else we could perhaps look at and from those early days and see what's worth investigating. Of course, listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode, remember you can leave a comment for us on your podcast provider of choice, whether it's iTunes, Podbean, whatever. Go on, you know you want to. We've got social media. You can give us a follow at Power of 3 Pod. That's 3 with the number 3. We're on Blue Sky at Finished Zine, FINISHEDZINE, or if you're in America, ZINE, just to translate there for you. And of course, we have a Facebook page too. And you can find these episodes are on YouTube as well, but there's no video because it takes long enough to edit audio without having to do video. So Craig, the man with the captain's beard, the top pirate band t-shirt on, it's time to head off. And of course, you do have the right to pick a song because that is your want as co-conspirator of the day.
Well, that's very kind. And being that this is called Master, and while we have to accept that this is the decayed or crispy Master, or however you want to describe the Geoffrey Beevers incarnation, I feel that the Captain's Beard, the band of which I adore, would love it if we played their song, I've Got a Beard.
Fantastic. I look forward to hearing it. So until next time, and I look forward to helping you shiver your timbers again, matey.
Thanks, mate. I'll see you next time.
I've been Captain Kenny. War. No, that was more of a farmer, wasn't it? With the OR. Skull and crossbones. R. R.
I've got a beard, it's important to me. Having a beard's my destiny. I've got a beard and it makes me strong. Having a beard means I'm never wrong. They say I'm evil, how could that be? When I grew this beard at the age of 3. They say I'm bad, but that's impossible, 'cause this beard makes me infallible. If I push in line, if I call your mother a swine, if I steal your eggs, if I break the legs, it's okay because I have a beard. Having a beard is good at sea. The crew are completely terrified of me. That's mostly because I had the manhood spirit, but that's okay because I have a beard. Yes, having a beard's bloody good. When I draw my pistol, I'm understood. Now give me your cash and don't get brave. So be painting the deck with your brains. If I push in line, if I call your mother a swine, if I steal your eggs, if I break your legs, it's okay because I have a beard.